Gut Punched, Alzheimer's, and Caregivers. Navigating the insidious illness of Alzheimer's is something nobody asks for. The disease sneaks up on you and your loved one, and it feels like you've been sucker punched in the gut. Then you ask, where do we turn for help? Who do we call? What do we do? These questions and more are what we hope to answer and give you some direction and hope. Now let's join our host, Jeff Edwards.
Greetings and welcome. This is Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers, episode 39, or A New Beginning, part 2. How's it going this week? Is it smooth or bumpy, good or bad? Well, there are a lot of things currently going on around us, from bad weather to fires, an inauguration, politics, whatever, but we're not going there. You know, changes are everywhere. After almost 30 years, I retired last week from one of my jobs, so I can spend more time working on bringing more resources and information to those who can benefit by them. We're here to be positive, uplifting, and hopeful as we deal with our journey with Alzheimer's and dementia. In our last episode, Gut Punch, Alzheimer's and Caregivers, number 38, we discussed basics about Alzheimer's, basics about caregivers, which then became The New Beginning, part 1. Now, in this episode, we're going to share our story, my story, on how we use things we've learned using the information and resources that have been presented to us. How following information, suggestions, and listening to other caregivers' experiences and circumstances can help guide another caregiver in the right direction, finding the positives in the pain of an insidious disease. Our Gut Punch, Alzheimer's, and Caregivers rules play a major role. And what are they? 1, you have to take care of yourself, because if something happens to you, who is going to take care of your loved one? Number 2, you can't do it alone. You need help. Find good caregiver groups or network with friends and relatives. And number 3, make a list of people, friends, relatives, coworkers who have offered to help you in time of need, and then make a list of things you need done but can't do yourself because caregiving duties are overwhelming. Use the lists, start at the top, and keep going till you get what you need done. You'll find it very helpful. As we mentioned in our last episode, it's always good to review and commit to memory some of the important facts about the disease and learn some of the traits you need to be a good caregiver. We're going to lean heavily on rule number 2, to attempt or to try and tie some of what I've learned from Alzheimer's Association, the Dubin Center, doctors, and other caregivers. It has led me to relook at everything I've come across in the last 6 years. Now look, I'm nothing special. I'm not a doctor, not an expert, but I believe if I can do it, so can you. The resources, they're out there, and we try to bring them to you in a way to help lighten the load, to give you some hope that there is help for you and your loved one, and you don't have to battle this alone. And that is The New Beginning, part 2. So here's a bit of background. Way back in 2016, I noticed some changes in my wife's memory. Small things that make you go, like she couldn't remember a TV show we watched on a regular basis, and that was The Big Bang Theory. Then, back in 2017, during Hurricane Irma, on advice from a meteorologist friend of mine, I was looking at maybe having to evacuate from our home, which we actually did. At that point, my wife was unable to communicate clearly, unable to comprehend what was going on. It was kind of strange. Fast forward a few weeks, her balance was terrible. She kept falling off her bicycle. She fell down a flight of stairs. Unfortunately, she wasn't injured, and it went on. So in January of 2018, I made an appointment with my neurologist, and he's been my doctor for a few years. I have narcolepsy, and that's what he helps me with. And he thought my wife possibly had Alzheimer's based on the symptoms. So he referred us to a psychologist who administered one of the standard tests, and it took up to about 5 hours. And they wanted to see how my wife would do. Well, it wasn't pretty. The diagnosis, most likely, Alzheimer's disease. So the journey began. The doctor prescribed memantine and donzepam and sent us on our way. And that was the beginning of my journey and the beginning of a lot of research on my part. Hello, Dubin Center. A source of great resources and hope for me. My wife and I attended some group meetings, and I took some of their courses. And the best one was a Savvy Caregiver course. 6 weeks of education on Alzheimer's and how to care for someone with the illness as they progress. Another outstanding opportunity was Men's Caregiver Group that met every other week, and I went almost every 2 weeks. There did come a point in time that because of my job, I couldn't make them all, but about a year ago, I decided that I had to make attending those men's meetings a priority again, and I'm so glad I did that. Learning what other caregivers were going through, challenges they faced, and them sharing things they had learned was immensely helpful. From power of attorney, facility information, and experiences with doctors, no topic was squashed. It was education and education. The more I learned, the more I questioned. Why this? What about that? Who's your doctor? I questioned, did my wife really have Alzheimer's? Or was it another form of dementia? And was my wife getting the best care she could? What was being done to treat her? I pursued some of the information I received on different doctors, and one name kept popping up, so I investigated it. It took almost 3 months to get an appointment, and finally, in September of 24, I took my wife to see this very recommended doctor. The doctor was very thorough. She focused completely on my wife. She asked a lot of questions, and what was a conversation tested my wife on some things without her knowing that she was being tested. I really like that. My wife told her, I want you to be my doctor. So it began. We had a new beginning. The doctor scheduled a deep dive blood test. More than 13 vials of blood had to be taken, and that's not your typical blood draw. She ordered an MRI, but not for a typical MRI machine. This one is built by Tesla. It's supposed to be very fast, and it gives a much better defined picture of the brain. And she ordered a PET scan. The doc said with the results of all 3 combined, there was a 96% chance she could determine if my wife actually had Alzheimer's. The PET scan test was postponed 2 times by the company that does them, both only hours before the test was scheduled. The 3rd attempt was finally completed, but overall it took 3 months to get that one test done. And I was not a happy camper, but it was part of the journey. So why did it take 6 years for someone to really look into this for us? Can I blame her first doctor? Not really. Many neurologists have lots of patients. Some physicians who have been in practice a long time don't always have the latest and best information at their fingertips, but the technology is getting better. And we'll talk about the results when we return.
We'll be right back to Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
Repeat after me. Apple, table, penny.
Apple, red.
When you tell people he has Alzheimer's, but he's in a clinical study, it's
not so hopeless.
Yeah.
Maybe. You know, it's like, I hope we can just hang in there and maybe they'll find something, you know.
Ask me again.
What season is it?
It's when all the leaves down and
I know it's there, but I can't get it.
Yeah.
And it just kills me.
I remember watching Dad interact with the kids and thinking, geez, in 5, 6 years, will he even know who they are? 1 in 10 Americans over 65 has Alzheimer's disease. Learn more today at brightfocus.org.
This is Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
Okay, we're back. So what did we find out? Well, my wife has MCI, mild cognitive impairment. Dementia is not a factor at the present time. Her APOE genotype is a 3/4. APOE4 carrier is associated with increased CVD risk. There are amyloid concerns. There is high cholesterol concerns tied into white matter in the brain. So she'll be getting an infusion of inclisiran, Liquivo, to start. This will help slow down the growth of the white matter. Now she'll then move on to one of the more recently approved amyloid drugs, either Kinsella or Liquimbe. We've talked about those drugs in some of our past episodes. Now, there is also a more specified vitamin plan that she will be following, as well as adhering to the MIND diet. Wow. So what does all this mean? Well, we have more information than we've ever had on her condition. But most of all, we have a plan, a direction, a course of action to help slow down the onset of Alzheimer's or vascular dementia. And most of all, hope. There is no cure for Alzheimer's at the present time, but researchers are making progress in finding new ways to fight its effects. The million-dollar question is, why did I share all of this with you? Well, to show you by following rule number 2, you can't do it alone, you need help, find good caregiver groups or network with friends and relatives, that you can find help. We utilize resources from the Dubin Center and the Alzheimer's Association. We use caregiver meetings. We use caregivers. We use research to find other, more action-oriented doctors. Was it time-consuming? Sure, a little bit, especially when you're working full-time. Was it difficult? No, not really. Was it doing it alone? No, not at all. It was networking with others, sharing information with others, and using the information to formulate a plan of action. This is my new beginning part 2. And my question to you, will you take advantage of the resources that are available? Will you do whatever it takes to help your loved ones who are victims of Alzheimer's disease or dementia? You can do it too. That's right. As the Four Tops once sang, reach out, I'll be there. And you should be thankful I didn't try to sing that.
We'll be right back to Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
Are you the caregiver for someone living with dementia? You're not alone.
I was a caregiver for my wife for 10 years, and it was a lot of work.
I'm a caretaker for my wife who has Alzheimer's.
I'm a caregiver of my husband that has CTE, and it's incredibly challenging.
The Dubin Center in Fort Myers has been offering free educational classes and support since 1995.
The Dubin Center has helped me exponentially with so many questions answered. It's just been great.
This is Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
We hope what we shared in this episode has helped in some way, given you some hope, maybe some incentive. If you know someone who has a family member or friends who are dealing with a loved one who has Alzheimer's or any type of dementia, please share this podcast with them as we grow it to reach more caregivers and provide them with hope and direction. We would appreciate that very much. For more information, you can check out the Alzheimer's Support Network at https://alzsupport.org/about-us. The Dubin Center is at dubincenter.com. And to find your local chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, you can visit alz.org/local resources/find your local chapter. The website's really pretty easy to maneuver. And check out Dr. Perry's HealthSpan Partners website, https://healthspansouthwestflorida.com. You'll get more information on the guide there. And if you really want a deep dive on the guide, it's probably easier to just Google it, Edge it, or DuckDuckGo it. It's simple, the guide. Our website is gutpunch.com, and the email address is gutpunchedac@outlook.com. We want to thank you for joining us and invite you to come back again for more helpful information and resources. God bless.
This has been Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers, with your host, Jeff Edwards. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to us on all the platforms like Spotify, Apple, Pandora, and more. If you have a question or want to get in touch, our email is gutpunchedac@outlook.com.